Closet. I'm your host, EDAW'S. Yes, I am fresh to the PNW, and I'm a walking stereotype. I now have a beard and a flannel shirt, so talk a lot of shit. The weather's nice up here. The weather's nice up here. I have today with me Mr. ERIC WIER from
Dragged into turbo lasers.
Stuart and the Turbo Lasers. Jesus Christ, I'm the worst host that's ever
Nah,
existed.
it's
I'm
fine.
fresh off. I'm fresh off of I feel like it's been 6 months since I've done an episode. I don't even know what the hell's going on right now.
Yeah, well, nice to be here. Nice to be chatting with you. And yeah, I understand the difficulties of recording a podcast and finding the time to do it because of the aforementioned dragged into turbo lasers. But it's fun to be able to chat with people like yourself and others, and just spread the love of the hobby and just connecting as
Heck yeah.
people with other people with have shared interests and so forth. So yeah, good to be here chatting.
For sure. And we got to talk a little bit about metal, which we'll get into a little bit later, but metal and hardcore and stuff like that we've listened to, we both are kind of like-minded on in some respects. But the main reason why I had you on is because of all the talk in the past year about Vastarian
Yeah,
and all of the contests that went really well. It looks awesome. There was a lot of freaking awesome submissions
there
that
certainly
were in
were.
that. And just kind of the whole lore and how that kind of clicked for you guys whenever you thought about that idea.
Yeah, so I guess it's sort of a long process of just working through the miniature hobby. Like, I've been involved in it probably since I was in middle school in some capacity, kind
Yeah.
of joining, like, just thinking, oh, Space Marines are so cool looking and miniatures are cool, and trying to play the game somewhat competitively, to then shift off to like not really caring about that and
Not
being more
caring.
interested just the stories you can tell and what cool little models you can convert and share with other people and so forth. And
Right.
a blog between the bolter and me, it slowly kind of got more and more towards this aspect of converting and painting miniatures and trying to like build lore and narrative stuff around them. And I got the opportunity to go to other places and meet up with other like-minded people to play kind of smaller skirmish narrative style games. One of which like was in Nottingham, got to play this Pilgrim game with a bunch of people. But then more recently, Bill
Nice.
Ford, who I think has been on this podcast, he hosted a Mordheim event, Mordheim 2022. Got to go to that and meet him and a bunch of other amazing hobbyists.
God,
And
isn't he hot?
you
He
got
is
it.
like,
So hot.
my God.
Shout
He
out
is.
to you,
Look at
Bill.
him. My God, Bill. First time calling, first time listener, Bill. Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic dude. Brought a lot of us together from Grim Tex down whenever I was in Texas,
hmm
and probably going to be a lifelong friend, if not lover. But yeah, he's a great guy. You guys really have started from the very beginning. It seems like. How many years ago was that?
The which one? The
Like
2022.
meeting.
I guess it was in 2022. He just sort of reached
Okay.
out to us for that event. Hadn't been familiar with his work beforehand, but he's such a fun, friendly guy that we kind of hit things off pretty quickly. And then
Yeah.
the event itself was amazing, and that has just sort of continued to spiral and wanting to do more things. But it was because of, or part of like reflecting on that event and how the Mordheim skirmish system, how nice it is for running small narrative events, because it has a pretty straightforward system.
Yeah.
It's somewhat restricted in its setting and what warbands are there, but that slight restriction also kind of just a lot of flexibility for making cool things, but having a general understanding of what could be there. And you can still host a little event and have some fun narrative things, but it doesn't have to be super involved. And
Right.
thinking about that made me think about it would be fun to be able to do something sort of akin to that, but in the more science fiction setting, which is the one I think I prefer. From some of the previous ones, they had made kind of a fanatical cult, and you're like, you know what? It wouldn't be that hard, I don't think, to kind of take that Mordheim idea of this very distinctive setting, and but just have a bunch of crazy cults that all kind of believe the same thing, but different facets of it and different
Christianity is
levels.
what you're describing,
Yes,
and
yeah,
Bill's the one who
different,
made this.
yeah,
Yeah.
different levels of craziness and ridiculousness, and everyone feeling they have the right end of it, and then persecuting others. Thought it would seem very 40K within that setting,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in some sense, it seems, or to me, it seems so 40K, like the quintessential 40K, that there'd be these huge global spanning conflicts around some religious bullshit that like are all basically believe the same thing, but it still leads to this persecution, death, and so forth. Despite it seeming so 40K, it's also not something you really see in the current iteration of 40K that much.
Oh,
So
yeah.
much of it is more just like shiny blue ultramarines fighting orcs and tyranids and these large scale sci-fi battles, which is,
Yeah.
cool in its
Sure.
own right.
Sure. Sure.
But also
It's fine.
it is, I feel I've kind of moved past that. I was excited about that when I was in high school, and now I'm more I'm not as interested in that. I don't need to be competitive. I don't, but being able to tell more human stories and how people would be interact with these kind of horrible conditions is more interesting to me and more
Yeah.
engaging. And I like the idea of people making these weird cults that all worship the emperor. So it's not just like, well, it'll be easier to make conflict by having like space marines and chaos space marines show up or the tyranids show up.
And
But
Eric, I have to say this before. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I have to say it before I forget what I'm gonna say. But the idea, just like it sounds like a cartoon, right? Like all the Space Marines are constantly fighting these wars. They're off planet, different planet, blah blah
mm,
blah. And even at home, they're still fighting in the streets. It sounds like a Rick and Morty sketch where it's literally they're just constantly fighting. Nobody's ever like going like for somebody to go to the grocery store, they also have to kill this cult that stands outside of their grocery store just to be able to get like an apple or something.
yes,
Like
hyperbolic, everything turned up to 11, that there's
just war
always,
all the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just like
yeah.
what the fuck? Is there a peaceful day in this time? Like
No.
no, I really attached to it very easily because for one, I was friends with Bill and Bill let me in on everything. And all of Grim Text, where we have our group chat to this day. We text each other constantly. The thing that appeals to me the most about this is because it is a kit bash game,
Mhm.
100,000,000,000%, and it's something that we're all very into from the beginning to the end when you play the actual game. I think that it's that actually because the first bug that bit me was Dungeons and Dragons whenever I was a kid.
Mhm.
So was it Warhammer whenever you were younger that had bit you? Or were you
Yeah,
always into like role playing?
I would say it has been mainly Warhammer, and like I've dabbled
Yeah,
with some role playing stuff, but not as much as I would like. I feel I never found a group that had like a good GM or dungeon master that really pulled me in, and a lot of the like I
that
tried to do
sucks,
a bunch
man.
of Call of Cthulhu role playing sessions, particularly in high school, and
Yeah,
like, oh my god, we just laughed about everything. And I mean, that was fun and I loved it, but like we didn't quite
it
uh
didn't suck you in,
it sucked. It did to a point, but I feel not the way that it was intended to. Like I wasn't
yeah,
experiencing cosmic horror or something.
which is
But I
what you
really
wanted.
but I really like aspects of role playing and that just creative freedom behind it. And I think in some sense Warhammer and this stuff was just maybe a slightly more another way of doing similar things, but it was perhaps a bit more on rails in the beginning. Like there were miniatures there. And I mean, now a
Yeah,
lot of people role play, they have miniatures and so forth, and they do
yeah.
have like, they will draw out the little maps and determine like
I
how
love that you
far they
called
are
them
to
little
this.
draw out the little maps.
And I mean, I
Bring
think
out the
that's
little
cool.
maps.
And
Yeah,
everyone has their own thing that works best for them. But I feel the role playing stuff I think I gravitate the most to is stuff that is much more of like the theater of the mind, and you're not so caught up on, well, like, is this what D4 roll do you have to get to this, or how many milliseconds does it take to accomplish this or something, and be more
Jesus
fluid and
Christ. Who who damaged you as a DM? Who the fuck is this metagaming horrible DM that you're that you're talking about right now, they
Well,
should
so
be put to death.
yeah, I almost feel like
Yes.
it. Yeah, well, I guess I have somewhat of an aversion to be super rules lawyery type stuff.
No, for sure. Eric,
Eh,
I will say this. I don't know who abused you, and I'm very sorry that they treated you so poorly as a DM. They are a bad person. I don't
well, I almost feel some of it was when I did some of my initial D&D, how it was right
D&D
around the
hell.
time. Yeah, well, it was at the time of like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons going into third edition and such, and I think
Oh
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
just a bit too young and didn't. But I had to adhere to these rules and stuff, and I don't know. I think I was just a bit dumb about it all. Maybe it had something to do with like starting out even in Warhammer. When I started, like I was a bit too young to really have much grasp of the rules and would just push stuff around, roll dice, and like I thought I was playing
Yeah.
it, but I wasn't. And then eventually, finally, they have a skirmish game called Gorka Morka, which is just Mad Max with
Yeah,
orcs,
I've heard
and
about that one. Yeah.
that was like the first of the Games Workshop games that like it was a gift for Christmas. Got it and like sat down and read the rules, and it was like the first time it kind of clicked with me, like, oh, like that's how these like strength and toughness tables and stuff work, and you figure
Oh,
out what
okay.
you need to roll and such. And it finally clicked, like this is the type of stuff that I should have been doing previously and was not.
Okay.
But now I feel in my journey through that sort of hobby stuff, it kind of come to realize that the vast majority of Games Workshop games are kind of all boiled down to the same thing. You roll a bunch of six-sided dice, and if you get a four and above, you're successful.
Yeah.
Unless there's reason to believe otherwise, that like, oh, this is really hard or really easy, it might change. Yeah, I have no
Yeah, they
interest in
just do the
getting
same. Yeah.
super
Give D&D
technical and
just
like,
one more shot, Eric. I
yeah,
know that it was an abusive partner before, but maybe it's changed.
Yeah, I think there's been some talk that some of my wife's friends and stuff are wanting to start a D&D session soon, and I
Yeah,
might try to get
just
involved.
do a one shot. Just do, and all I'm saying, man, Eric, if there's any time that you want to make a guest spot on ours, you are more than welcome. We will take
Okay.
you in like the bear cub that you need to
During
be treated like.
COVID the time, my brother did some kind of one-shot sessions for Morkborg, and
Yeah,
that was fun. And like that is very
I
much more in the vein of theater of the mind, like not get too caught up in rules for this or that, and like,
yeah, I think that well, you bring up two really good important points. So, Morkborg, man, I have followed since inception, and I have been had my eyes on it the entire time. You know, whenever you have like a video game and you're like, God, if everybody else had this game, they could behold what this fucking whole
mhm,
thing is about,
yeah, yeah.
and nobody wants to play. And it's like, what the fuck is happening? I don't understand. Morkborg is a fantastic game that I have yet to play yet because I haven't had, but I was also down in bumfuck Texas. Now I'm in Tacoma, Washington, and I'm a little bit closer to civilization. So hopefully that ends up. And the second thing is, I think that those type of interactions, like whether it be Morkborg or any of the new systems, but it's just so awesome to see those type of games. And D&D will always hold a special place in my heart, but I was never competitive, so I never focused on World or Warhammer,
Mhm.
because of the fact that like I saw it as a competitive game, and I was like, I am so far away from that. I
I
don't
feel a
want
lot of it,
competition.
that's what was promoted a bit more. And like to some extent, it makes sense. Like Games Workshop, they're a publicly traded company. They want to sell those miniatures and like if they can bigger armies and this and that. But I think there's always been a large component of people that do handle it more like role playing
Yeah,
and aren't too precious or concerned about this and that. One thing that I really touching on Morkborg, and I think there's a ton of this, like maybe that like old school revival type stuff. So many different people creating their own small RPGs with different rule sets. Most that I think is really neat, and I think Morkborg, for example, like even if you don't necessarily play it specifically, a lot of these smaller role-playing books are just a great source of inspiration and different random tables to roll on.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is cool. And just the graphical design, like so many little things come together to create the world building in it, that even
Mhm.
just the random tables to find cursed items or whatnot, even if you don't use those tables, just glancing over them helps establish what this world is. And I think that in
Right, for sure.
itself is really cool and is a something I don't think I appreciated older Games Workshop books. Like, I mean, I guess the Realm of Chaos stuff, which everyone loves, was a little bit before my time, but they had so many random tables and so
Right.
forth about generating weird demons and stuff. And I think even if you don't use those religiously, it still gives you an idea of what could be present in the world or give you some framework to use as like a
Yeah, I mean,
springboard for your own
well, it's
ideas, which is cool.
and it's like backgrounds for D&D, so they didn't have to put backgrounds in there, right? And they've done that in previous iterations, but they've just added a little bit more extra so that they can navigate certain players, especially people who don't play,
Yeah,
to
because it
like
helps
in a
to have
different
some
direction.
more established things to give people, newer players, a sense of what you could be doing. And the more you play it, probably the more familiar you are with it and the more comfortable you are to kind of step outside some of those boundaries. Towards that end, when you play D&D, is there one of their settings that you tend to play in, like Forgotten Realms,
Yeah, generally it's
Planescape,
Forgotten Realms.
or because I
I, I
feel that
would I would love to play a RuneScape game. I would
okay.
love to play a Dragonlance game, but generally, literally is finding the group
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do something like that. And I'm sure I could promote it. Like I ran a game for 3 years, and now it's another person's turn to be DM, and I'm like, great, because it is a lot of preparation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a weekly thing, so it's like weekly or bi-weekly, and but it's a lot of info all the time.
Yeah.
And what you were saying before, whoever was like rule intensive in D&D sounds like an asshole, because it really gets demonstrated by people like Brennan Lee Mulligan whenever he does these stories about like anything. He's a great improv guy, but he brings comedy into it. And if somebody wants to do something enough and they give it a decent enough reason,
Mm-hmm.
he does it.
Yeah,
Like
why
that's
not?
like I think that that's very sad that that was an experience that somebody's had, because it's like I've never. The only time I've had a bad D&D experience is whenever people were acting like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes that to me becomes a competition now. I don't even want to be a part of it.
Yeah,
So
no, and that's fair. And I don't think it was just I think my inexperience with it, my brother's inexperience, no one having DM'd something,
yeah,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
we kind of fell back on the rules. And I mean,
Well, the
there is
rules
still
are for
something,
Warhammer. You generally
yeah,
follow the rules to the T.
and
So I
like I
get
know
that.
there is some fun, like with most games, to be honest. There is some fun in list building, character
Yeah.
building, getting really deep into like how to min max this or like how do all these interesting spells or something, how can they synergize in an effective way, and there's fun to that, similar with like Magic the Gathering, building
Yeah.
these fun
Yeah.
decks and stuff. But I certain games that to me is more the point of them, whereas I think for like role playing, to me the point is to play a role, to
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
fit into this. It's not, whereas it's like, Magic the Gathering, like I mentioned, while there's cool artwork on there and there's some flavor text, and sure, there is some lore no one knows from all the different
Is he talking shit
Mirrodin
about
and
D&D right now, guys? Is he talking shit about? You talking shit about D&D? Is
but
that what
for
we're doing? Eric, I was accepting. Okay, now you've turned it into abusive behavior now.
I'm talking
Uh,
about Magic the
yeah,
Gathering
I
here.
know, I know. I'm joking.
But I feel for it's something that like I find it's easier to get really into like how to craft that great deck with all these synergies and so forth, because it really lends itself to that. Whereas I think with Dungeons and Dragons and role playing, I think the strength of it, what is so cool about it, is the theater of the mind stuff and being improvisation and being creative in the moment. And like something like Warhammer, I think maybe straddles that line a little bit more. There is all the creativeness of building miniatures, painting them, perhaps coming up with background for the leaders or this and that. But then there still is the more defined or you have to build that list and how these rules are and such. But with all of these games, it is a spectrum, and you slide into the thing that fits your personality and what you want out of it the most.
Yeah, I think the most fun that I ever have is weaving a story. Anymore for me, and this is going to sound kind of silly. At times, there's even like fighting times that happen during D&D. I'm like, I like to do it. That's what I used to love about D&D, right? Whenever I was a kid.
Hmm.
But now I'm so heavily on the role playing aspect that it's cool. Their interactions and fights are good. I mean, there's sometimes where they're good, but there's other times where I'm just like, I'd rather get back to like trying to figure out.
Well, yeah, because I mean, some of it I feel, even in the little I've played Morkborg and some of those games, sometimes it can just get back like, okay, it's my initiative order. I
Yeah,
have to roll some dice. Like, I bumbled it. I didn't roll the 14 I needed, or whatever, or the 12, or whatever it
yeah,
is. And now it's like, okay, I'm gonna go get a soda and wait until it's my turn. As other people,
yeah,
like it just like comes down to that one die roll. If you fucked it, like, well, you'll be back. I'll be back unless I need to make some armor, this or that. And I think the more it could be in engage elements of creativity and role playing in that, the more it becomes like you want to be there and you want to see, well, what
right.
creative thing did this other person do when they see that? And like, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. But I think the more you play with a group and become comfortable with one another, and I think it's more likely that that sort of spontaneity could happen. And I think
Yeah,
that
for sure.
is cool, like, is really cool.
It's definitely a investment because like here's the thing, right? Especially for the DM, investment in time and long time, especially if you have kids or if you have a wife or whatnot. I mean, it's a long time of preparing. So whenever you go into it, man, I mean, you can lose relationships over the game. I've ran into that issue before where I mean it's rough. It's a rough place out there. But I think that I finally found that group for my adult life and I think it really works for us.
That's
But yeah,
great.
I can't imagine going into something and not knowing. I've been asked to DM a new game here soon and I'm like, do I want to do that again? Do I want to do that and then try and take a guess on if these guys are going to be good about it?
Hmm.
It's a lot to put into it. But I wanted to get more to the Vastarian stuff. Do you guys have an event coming up here?
Yeah, no. So Bill Ford is helping us run something this November in Houston, Texas, and we've invited a bunch of people. So a bunch of cool people are going to be involved, and I'm really excited to just meet up with a bunch of old friends and some new ones, or people I've just, known through Instagram or things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, most of them I've seen in one way or another through other events and so forth. But I think it was kind of another reason why I've been trying to present Vastarian on the blog through different things is also another way to try to show people how you can do a similar thing like this. Like, even if you
Mhm.
came up through these games, the straight Games Workshop way of like competitive playing in tournaments, or like adhering to codex books or something, a lot that like you can approach it in this more 28 style freeform way, and you don't have to follow some strict guidelines for that, and try to,
Right.
through posts and such, show that like, hey, like, use whatever rule system you're comfortable with, because the more comfortable you are with it, the more likely you can easily shift and change stuff to fit the stories you're trying to tell, and not get too precious or worried about like, oh, well, let me flip through this rule book to find this or that, and just live
Right.
within the moment of the game. And I think that parallels probably good role playing sessions, where like you kind of let all those particulars fall away and can really focus on the here and now with the people there with you. So, yeah, wanted to use Vastarian as a way to show people that you can convert miniatures however you like, and
Hmm.
play games however you like, and
There's a
develop
whole
your own.
mythology now, man. There's tower heads.
Yeah,
There's,
yeah.
you know what I
Eh,
mean? Like
yeah.
that's to me. I think it's the best part about this hobby in general. I think so. It was Rod of Hondius, right? Was the
That yeah.
previous event, and then
Hmm.
Vastarian came up. I'm waiting for the next fucking year, man. Like every
Yeah,
single
no, there's so many cool
year, it
things,
seems
and
like there's just something new that's coming out that I can get behind because it's fresh and it's not the same thing over and over again. It's very inspirational.
yeah, and that was because some of the initial events, like in 2016, we did this pilgrim event with some of the people behind Iron Sleet, and John Blanche was there, and some of those people. At the time, like Instagram wasn't a huge thing, and it was blogs and forums and so forth. And some of that stuff was shown in White Dwarf magazine, and I felt it could feel a bit elitist, I think, from people looking in from the outside. Like, how do I get involved in this?
Yeah.
And they want to do these cool creative things, but don't really know how to engage with it. 28 magazine was an effort to start to show people that, you can get involved in any of these things,
Awesome publication. Yeah.
explore the hobby however is speaking to you, and that's okay, and you should do that. Vastarian has been something to try to show, like, from the ground up how we've been approaching it, to give people flexibility and encourage them to do a similar thing. And that is was some of the part, and have posts on our blog and so forth talking about our thought processes around it, to try to make that process of someone who's been playing 40K for a bit, that sees some
Hmm.
of this stuff and thinks it's cool, to see like, hey, I could do something like this, or I could get
Right.
involved in Vastarian, or just do something like it and find some people in my area who are
Right. Some
excited
common
about that
ground.
type
Like,
of thing.
yeah, it's still
And
Vastarian, technically, man. I mean, you're milking the idea. Guy, this fictitious guy that we're talking about, where he's coming up with a different game based off of Vastarian.
yeah.
But man, I think it really opens up, and it seems like it's more. It seems extremely inclusive. Not that anything seems exclusive in the hobby, but if somebody's to go into a hobby store right now, they might feel like it's exclusive because they're not at the tables and they don't want to feel weird going up.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's very important. Fucking hate Instagram so much, and I know if I didn't have to do it, but luckily we have things like Discord now. But I don't know. I don't. There's just
Social
it
media can
hasn't
be
come yet. I don't
kind of
think.
awful.
Yeah, and people have tried to bring out stuff like there was another app that was like art app, and then it was like certain difficulties to use, and then I don't know. It's just we're all in this limbo together. I went off on that tangent, but yeah, man, it's like what I was going to bring up with you with more core things. The reason why that game turned me on to like the subject matter and everything is because they did what Hasbro does not do. They they're like, oh, people are making stuff based off of our game. We're gonna allow them to put the Morkborg symbol on it,
Hmm.
and we're just gonna like let people go wild with their imagination and shit. Like, I think that sometimes I just buy books for the artwork.
No, yeah, 100%. I feel that's mainly what I do. Like, buying it doesn't buy you the time to play it necessarily,
Right.
but it's
Exactly.
still, at the very least, I mean, for all these things, like, we take our inspirations from everywhere, and an
Right.
amalgamation of different things. And, like, that's cool. That's part of life and part of creativity. And yeah, I love to see all that stuff. And like you said, they, I think, did an amazing job of allowing people to create stuff within their settings and, like, feel a part of it, and that's
Right.
nice.
Well, it's good, man. And I'm excited for you to go down to Houston. You won't feel like you're in Texas whenever you're around a lot of those people that are going. So that's a bonus. It doesn't feel as hateful there.
Yeah, well, I have some family in Houston, so I've been there a few times, and
Okay. Fair, yeah.
um, but I don't know.
It's just so bright and wonderful, Texas. I just have a bad relationship with it. I think I really love where I'm at now and
Mm.
everything. I was just meeting those guys was probably the best part about going down to Texas. But
I mean, I would not want to live in Texas. Like, there are some
no,
good things. Like, there are good places everywhere, but
yeah, there's good places everywhere, but half of them aren't like 9 hours to drive across.
oh my God, yeah. So towards that end, I live in Baltimore, and a couple years ago, we drove down to Texas, to
God,
visit my wife's grandmother and so forth. And I mean, it was fun driving down, visiting places
Yeah,
along the way. But it's just so funny. Like the last day of the trip, like you just get to the border of Texas. It's like, oh, the trip's almost over. Then you're just like, fuck, Houston's still 3 goddamn hours from
yeah,
the border.
yeah,
But when you look in the map, it's just like, oh yeah, it's just right on the edge there. It'll be so quick.
yeah. It's
And
just
like,
right over there. Yeah, no big deal.
no,
Yeah,
no,
it's
Houston or
fucking.
just Texas in general is such a big state.
Do you think that they came up with purgatory after they came up with Texas?
Uh,
It's like a long purgatory, and then you turn on the radio, and then you're like, maybe something will cheer me up, and then you hear like the governor's put a lot of razor wire that's killing kids down by the border. That's pretty great. Yeah, it makes you feel real good inside. It's a down home southern great time down there.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I'm sorry if I insulted any. You know Texas is awful, but
yeah.
part of the reason too that I was wanting to have you on, Eric, is because some of the the Vastarian stuff started going. How long have you been doing the blog?
Oh, quite a while now. Maybe started it in 2013 or so.
Yeah.
So it's been going for quite a while. The Our podcast, Dragged into Turbo Lasers, was started
Mm,
in 2016, which was right around the time when we really started to get into that 28 kind of creative
yeah.
sort of stuff more. And yeah, so it's been going for quite a while, and it was actually something my
A
brothers and
long
I
while. Yeah.
had started when pretty much just all went our separate ways off into graduate school and
Hmm.
wanted to just have a way to like stick with the hobby and interact with one another despite not being together like up until that point like we were always together, went to the same college, same major, that type thing, but wanted to keep involved in the hobby and thought that that would be a fun way to sort of chronicle what we were doing, and we've
Yeah.
kept it up.
I think it's dope. Yeah. I mean, I still go through posts that I love to read and go through and just like reread and
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, and I guess being on like a blog, it's not that easy to navigate and find stuff. Like I tried to have some like stuff along the headers for different things and different events and so forth to help, but I don't know, over all these years, it can be hard to find stuff.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it is with any kind of informational. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
it serves its purpose, and I mean, I love it. I listened to Turbo Lasers before I had listened to any kind of Warhammer or like any kind of podcast that was more informational.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was really helpful in navigating some of those questions that a lot of people want to ask, but they don't ask because they don't want to seem like the odd man out, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and the podcast Dragging the Turbo Lasers, it fairly quickly shifted into primarily just interviewing people that were also kind of involved in this similar creative space and not that concerned over the rules and this and that. And I thought it would be another way of like removing some of the elitism aspects of it to
Yeah,
like
for
just
sure.
talk to some of these people who are doing things like this and help show other people that it's not that big a step to be doing similar things, but ultimately just enjoy the things you are doing and not feel like you have to be too restricted because Games Workshop said this or other
Yeah, fuck
company
Games
wants
Workshop.
that.
Like, fuck Games Workshop.
Yeah.
You get some good prints out there, but like, I mean, it's a lot of kit bashing. So yeah, but I even find it's more fun now. Like at the very beginning of me kit bashing, right? Like Warhammer was the very beginning of that, and I used all of their models and put them together in different ways. But then I think it's more fun for me to buy more smaller product
Hmm.
stuff from people that are in our community.
Yeah, yeah.
I love the minis from Rotten and Rotten Factory. There's there's tons of really good companies out there that really just a person just throwing out miniatures out there that I think I respect a little bit more than Games Workshop. But
Yeah, I
I'm
feel
also glad that it's getting out its name out there too.
mhm. I think some of I think of like Ramshackle Games and like even just some of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that Anna from
100%.
Gardens of Hecate, just people creating miniatures more like what Games Workshop did in the beginning of things, and it's not as much of like chasing what they think customers want
Right.
to buy, and
Right.
instead making things that the sculptors and creators they want to make. And
Right.
that is more important to me. Like, I don't care what Games Workshop thinks I want. And like, I feel that's why like they're just spinning another example of how can we make another Space Marine a bit different, or let's make medieval Space Marines, and we
Yeah.
created Stormcast. And like,
Yeah.
some of the stuff now it's gotten, yeah, it really seems like it's just like, what do we think someone could want, as opposed to like actually following things people are, the creators are interested in. Because like all the people, the designers, the sculptors, the painters, the writers, like they're all so talented, but despite
Mhm.
that, some of the things that are being released now, like, I don't think quite reflects the true skill
I
and
don't think so.
creativity of the people there, and it seems it's starting to feel a bit more corporate.
I mean, if they're gonna take a page from Hasbro's book, that's the way they would do it, and it seems like they have. Because and now I don't know anything about this, so I can only speculate. But the new rules for D&D just came out for 5th edition, and I don't know what's changed, and if it's very minuscule, it's just a money grab.
Yeah,
It's
so
just
is
not
it like
even
a
worth it.
new version of fifth edition, or is it
Yeah, that's my
like
understanding
an
is that it's a
updated?
new yeah, like an updated version. And I'm like, "No, what you did is fine. Like,
Yeah.
let everybody else work out the extra details. You're
Yeah,
gonna
it
publish a
seems like
brand new
that
book?"
does. I mean, I guess if you're new into it, sure, buy the new version or whatever, but do you really need to buy another version of the player's handbook, the monster manual, and the
No.
GM guide or whatever? Like, I
No,
don't even really play D&D, but I have multiple copies
yeah.
of those books, and they probably still, the Beholder's still in the monster manual,
Yeah, it's still oh my god, it's a different picture, Eric.
yeah,
It's a
I mean,
different picture of their representation of it. I'm
so I
like,
don't know.
"Bro, this
Yeah.
is just, like, obnoxious." If anything, like, there are some good campaigns, like, there's some good modules or whatever, but most of the time, anything you make up is gonna be better.
Well, and towards
I
that
mean,
end, they could still release new modules, campaigns, but like it probably doesn't really
ah,
matter, or it
no, it
can't
doesn't.
matter if there's some slight balance changes to the barbarians,
Oh,
whirlwind, or
no! I didn't
whatever
win at
the
D&D.
shit
That's the
is.
whole point of D&D, right, is to win it. It's like,
Yeah.
every single time I've been asked that question, I get it. It comes from a place of not knowing. But sometimes it comes to me, and I can't help but think, like, "You're an asshole. I don't want you to be in D&D. I don't you don't win
Well,
anything."
I have a thought. Well, what's your thoughts towards this? And like, I feel perhaps a lot of people might be introduced to role playing
Mm,
through video games, and like
right?
there are tons of role playing video games, but I feel
Tons,
a vast majority of them
tons.
are role playing only in name. Like, there's very little role playing. You're just,
Oh, for sure, yeah. Yeah.
and I think it has gotten better and better. There's
True story. Yeah.
more effort to give you meaningful choices and so forth that could
Right,
affect things. But a lot of it's more just like, I'm playing a third person action ish game
right.
in a fantasy setting, and there's some loose narrative back there. So we will call it a role playing game. But like, you're not actually going into a role and making choices you think they would make. It's just like a
You're
Mass Effect
controlling
thing.
somebody.
Like, I am
Yeah,
playing good character, so I choose the blue answers. I don't even
right.
need to read the answers because I'm good, or I'm the bad one, so I'll choose the
Yeah,
red ones.
yeah.
Like, the fact that, I think
Yeah,
some of that
it's
that is I think there's been a shift away from some of that. But the
yeah,
things where it's
I think
just like, literally, like, we will color code so you know which thing to say. It's just like, that's terrible. Like,
yeah,
God, that's so like,
yeah. It's pretty but here's the thing, here's the other side of that coin, and I can't even believe I'm doing this. Here's so what they could do, though, is they could demonize the word role-playing, right?
mhm,
They could demonize the word role-playing and only stick it with Dungeons& and Dragons and call it satanic and everything else and bloody, bloody,
yeah,
bloody.
yeah.
They could do that too. So I agree with you.
I guess maybe I don't know if I actually answered my question, but I wonder if, because a lot of people probably are coming from games like that, and like obviously like you can win it, like you beat the game
Yeah,
type thing. Like, I
for sure.
wonder if it it may be easy to understand that you might come at it with slight misconceptions. I think, as I said,
For
some
sure, yeah.
newer
That
stuff,
makes sense. Yeah.
even like Baldur's Gate 3, like there's a lot more effort to create characters and have meaningful choices and so forth. And
Right.
that was a role playing game that I felt that actually got somewhat close to approximating what a role playing could potentially be.
Yeah.
But a
Yeah.
lot of them I don't think quite gets there. It's just like a fun video game.
Right. It's not the same feeling that I get playing a game like that
Hmm.
or playing a role.
Yeah.
Know that I like attention, so I love I know that bad thing about myself. I know that I like attention and trying to tell stories and stuff like that. Uh, it's much better whenever I'm playing D&D with people that as opposed to Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 has its own place. I
Hmm.
still like it. I still have fun with it, but it's not I don't go for role playing. So I see what you mean. Like and the winning aspect of
Hmm.
that in the end.
I do think it game design like this, it does give the creators an interesting choice of like, and like you almost need to have some metacognition and thought about like, well, what is it? What are the things that I want to promote and showcase for a
Yeah.
game here? Like, what's important about this? And in some sense, like for Baldur's Gate 3, it's a D&D Hasbro type product. Like they had to
Right.
like, we want to faithfully put up all these spells and so forth. And for me, role playing, that's not that important. But
Yeah.
have you played a game called Disco Elysium?
I have a little bit of it. Yes. I have, yeah.
So I thought that was a very fascinating look at like another take on role playing because it's like a role playing game, but it basically completely eschewed combat and stuff from it.
Yeah.
Like you don't, and I thought that was fun. Like when the designers were thinking about how what's the messages and the story and the themes and things they want to convey through the game, and
Right.
had kind of the courage to recognize that, you know what, like this is like a detective story. We don't need to shoehorn in some shitty combat system to
Right.
do what we're saying. And it made me think back. One of my other favorite like role video game like role playing things was an older game, Planescape Torment. So in the
Mhm. Yeah.
Planescape setting, and like I thought, really loved the game, the weird characters and the narrative themes and stuff throughout it. But it always felt to me like the best thing of it was the development, the characters, the narrative stuff, and they just tacked on the D&D system because like we felt we had to do it because it's Planescape and this is how the rules are. And like you never really wanted to be in that combat, and like you could avoid a bunch of them depending
Yeah.
on how your stats were. But I felt like it was a game like if it would have been designed today, they probably could have just removed almost all that combat because it wasn't
Wasn't
the
worth it.
focus of it.
Yeah.
And I guess all of this is kind of me rambling around. Like I think
No,
it's
you're fine.
fascinating to approach these games from a like what is it we want to do and convey, and how can we better convey them, and are there things we can cut or things we can emphasize to better achieve those things. And it doesn't necessarily have to just be what has been done for the last 35 years because that's how they do it.
Yeah, it can be changed up and into something more interesting, I think, because it gets to a point to where it's just the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are getting to the part of the show where we bring up the kindness corner. Today, Barrett, if you could you put up a picture of Laura Loomer dressed as the Penguin from the Dark Dark Knight Returns? Is it Dark Knight Returns? Batman Returns? Batman Returns, and have her sitting on the shoulder of our one true blue orange minion. No, it's Donald Trump. Kindness corner. I kind of explained this a little bit before. Bit of kindness in the community that actually because all of us like are here for a reason, right? If we
Hmm.
saw a lot of negativity, I think it wouldn't be as tight knit of a community as it is, or this little niche. So,
Hmm.
what's a little bit of something seen in your life or that you've heard that is a bit of kindness?
I guess the thing that comes to mind initially in terms of the hobby and so forth would I think to all the Hive Scum people that podcast those people and how they are so excited to welcome new people into this hobby. Like Gage from it, like he helped create the In Rust We Trust Discord as a way to help bring all these disparate people together, share the love of this hobby, and then like talk about all sorts of different games, music, different aspects of this, and bring
Like
more
600
people.
channels on that
Yeah,
one
yeah.
channel.
So I mean, it's kind of hard to manage, but it still allows people to find other people in a
Yeah, for
similar
sure.
region and so forth. And I think that is amazing. And then the fact that they have like all the Hive Scum people then have a podcast so they kind of just hang out and can kind of show that, that's again something that you can do. You can hang out with your friends and encourage other people to get involved. They've held all these different events from more time events like Nemo, the
Emo,
uh,
yeah.
um, and under the Dice Fest and so forth, and they do a lot of
Right.
charity-based stuff, raising monies for good causes and so forth. And I think that community focus of them to try to get as many people involved and just enjoy people's company and enjoy this creative aspect of things is nice, while all the while being very open and honest. And yeah, they're just great, and I think they're helping promote the best aspects of this hobby, which I think is kind of the community
And
involvement. And
nobody's ever heard of that podcast at all.
no, right?
If you want to check, we'll put it in the description.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
very small podcast,
might be
very
hard to find
few
them.
members. There's not anybody in. I honestly, half the time, they don't even talk about Warhammer. They don't even do
No,
anything.
it's true.
They
They
just sit there
often
for
don't.
like 3 hours and do absolutely nothing. Nobody watches them, but yeah, it's no big deal. No, I'm at the 600 channels not because it's hard to manage. It's very we finally have a place where it is manageable and it's not searching people out, and it's an easier way to it, which is pretty awesome.
And
Like
some
broken
sense
up by
about it
region.
too that I think is fun. A bunch of them, like you can, where I've had a lot of experiences, like, chatting or knowing some people from the Discord and then going to like one of their events or whatever, and they're recognizing, like, you're such and such, and then
Yeah,
then find their Instagram account and you're like, oh, you made
yeah,
this stuff. But like to have some of these human connections that are not so based on what cool things you've done or how
yeah.
many followers you have or whatever, and just based
Right.
on the interest and is
Actually liking people.
yeah, is nice to not, yeah, be so focused on, like, I guess it removes some of the more negative social media aspects
Yeah,
that
for sure. Yeah,
are
because
easy
they
to
can get.
perhaps
Yeah,
fall
you
into.
just see somebody like somebody's intimidated by somebody with like 20,000 followers. It's just I we got to get past that. We can't focus on stuff like that, especially for this community. Because yeah, I think the
No.
human interaction in it is the best part about it. That's the main reason why I actually started mine, like a year or two ago. I can't even remember. Is because of the fact that I love meeting people in the community, and I can't do it as much as I would like to. So the best way to do it is to talk to them over.
No,
Basically,
yeah.
basically, this is for me. This is for nobody else. This is like my way. This is my ticket to being able to hang out with people that I would like to hang out with or that I find interesting. But especially the art aspect of things is a huge pull to me. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful community.
Yeah, and I think that the community aspect is one of the reasons why I'm still so involved in it. Like it would be very easy to kind of fall away from it just due to life concerns and this and
For
that. But
sure, yeah,
being able to meet and become friends with so many people is
it's
great. And
insane.
I really appreciate that Hive Scum and Rust We Trust and such, that they are really helping encouraging more people to find that and recognizing that there are more people out there that are interested in kind of this niche of a niche hobby, and that you should try to find that and promote that. And
Well, I know that Highcomb would be really appreciative that you've mentioned them again. They are a very small podcast that nobody
yeah, no,
listens to,
no
and
one,
they won't even listen to this because they're not on the scene. They're not doing
we're not
anything.
friends of the pod.
Never done any bit of listening to them whatsoever. Nobody
Yeah,
has.
it's fair.
None
It's fair.
of the two people that watch this podcast, which is all of Grimtex. So it's only my closest friends. Eric, it's been awesome to have you on, man. Is there anything that you want to plug while you got the chance to?
I mean, I guess I'd say like follow our blog Between the Bolter and Me, my brothers and I. Like, I guess you could find us on Instagram and such as well, but I think blogs are maybe they're not as popular as they once were, but I think you
Take a
can
look.
get a lot more information from them. So follow it if you'd like to. Maybe follow
Especially the
Drag.
Vastarian stuff. It's been great.
Yeah, no, and I'd really encourage people to try to get involved in Vastarian, create your own weird cults and whatnot, to develop some lore and just try to engage in that creative
See some more
aspect of your
funny
brain.
ones. I need to
Yeah.
see some like ridiculous. Like I love all the cults that have come out, all of their mythology and everything. I think it's like their history. It's just so dope to go on there and read that. But anyways, Eric, it's been great having you on, man. And just stick around a little bit longer. It's gonna upload on your side, and we're gonna sign off here. Everybody,
Yeah, well,
have a
thanks
good
for
night.
having me.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and I appreciate it. We'll have you in hopefully again soon.
Yeah, I'd love
For
that.
the event, maybe.
Hey there, this is Barrett from the ATI Podcast here to talk about what we have going on the ATI Podcast Network. First, we'll start with Waxing On with R and J. The format of Waxing On with R and J is audible selections made exclusively by our hosts and brothers, Ridge Jackson and Jake Jackson. Waxing On with R and J is sure to tickle your inner eardrums with some of the most vile tones you've ever encountered, and conversely, ear candy with pop melodies, focusing on spotlighting underground and rising artists. Waxing On with R&J is another outlet of the ATI podcast community to bring awareness to many musicians' craft. Also found on the ATI Podcast Network, NODNARB'S Closet, hosted by Brandon Stuart of EDAW'S. NODNARB'S Closet is a wing of the ATI podcast programming that delves into the world of role-play games, miniature painting, diorama making, occasional pro wrestling match watch-alongs, providing commentary with a dash of jocularity and satire, and much, much more. Of course, leading the pack is the ATI Podcast. On the ATI Podcast, we episodically invite guests onto our show to spotlight their talents, whether that's musicians, filmmakers, artists, actors, businesses, even athletes. Nothing is off the table. The focus of the ATI Podcast and its collective creative arms, whether that's Waxing On with R and J or NODNARB'S Closet, is to bring awareness and focus to people's talents. Be sure to follow us across all traditional podcasting platforms, and for the full experience, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search the ATI Podcast. Stay safe out there.